Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarei. Okay, good morning, good Erev Shabbos to everybody. Thank you for joining us. As we jump back, and we see out to the Shmaya into Torah Zayin. It is dedicated and sponsored, actually, and thank you for reminding me, because there was a last-minute sponsorship. 1 second. The shiur is dedicated, as always, as a schus for Refuah Shlema for Daniel Aberman Sheni Yehudis, and as a schus Refuah Shlema also for Devar Sarvas Miriam, as well as Le'ila Nishmas, somebody who was actually niftar this week, Esther Bas Blanca. Zechar Lebracha, Ernest Shem should have an aliyah, and Be'ezras Hashem, everybody should be healthy and well. So we jump, thank you for reminding me. So we jump into Torah Zayin, where we spent a number of days already exploring this new universe, where Rabbi Nachman opens up. We'll just do a very, very quick review. Rabbi Nachman, so we have other Sfarim up there. If you want to grab one, Yuda, maybe you'll take some. Yeah? Maybe. Where we began talking about the tzaddik's way of approaching nature as a place that's full of hisparos, as a place that's reflective of the pride that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes in Klal Yisrael. And he sees a connection and a correlation between all of creation as a whole and Klal Yisrael as a whole. B'shvil Yisrael shenikru reishis. He sees a correlation between each and every particular creature and every specific member of Klal Yisrael, and each particular detail within each particular Jew, that Hashem has a special hisparis, a special pride from every tiny part of the Jewish experience, as well as every detail of nature, that those things reflect one another, because the whole world is brought into being based on, we spoke a little bit about this last night as well, the Parsha Thursday night, Hachana l'Shabbos, we spoke about also that without Klal Yisrael, and really without Shabbos, without Klal Yisrael, the whole project doesn't get off the ground. Klal Yisrael are there, like we learned in Torah Zayin, to serve as the Mamlechas Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, to bring the whole world back to Hashem, and to elevate all of creation, to create for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world a dir b'tachtonim, a dwelling place to reveal the latent potential for godly expression, which we call the Shechina. Rabbi Nachman said, because the tzaddik does this, and those who encounter the tzaddik are experiencing a person who lives life in this way, there's a revelation of yira and ava. Yira and ava are the result of the revelation of Malchus, of the revelation of Hashem's kingdom. Just like when a king has a Yom Haledes, has a Yom Gnusia de Malka, and the king has this experience where he comes out wearing all of his clothes of pride, and there's the clarity of the relationship that the king has to his subjects, that the subjects have toward their king, without which neither, right? The king is not a king without his subjects, the subjects are not subjects without the king, but there's pride in that relationship, there's gravity to that relationship, there's a certain yira, there's the recognition of the seriousness of this relationship, as well as the ava that is the result of the king giving out treasures and demonstrating his love, specifically on the Yom Gnusia de Malka, on the day of the inauguration, where there's a tremendous experience of chiba and love between the two, and that's the tzaddik finding yira and ava reflected in his experience of nature, as well as all of those who are connected to the tzaddik, who are able to taste a little bit of what it means to live life in this way. However, like we started to learn yesterday, when that light of the lifestyle that the tzaddik is enabling a person who's connected to his guidance and his advice and his consciousness and his way of thinking, because the tzaddik, like we discussed, I think after one of the shiurim, isn't intent on remaining a tzaddik and you remaining the followers. The true tzaddik wants that every single one of the people are connected to him, should be tzaddikim. Rabbi Nachman said, take my hand, follow my path, and you'll become tzaddikim, kamani mamish. Like it's not that's not a hierarchical. And that's what we said yesterday. There's not or 2 days ago, there's not a sense of control. It's not a system in that way. Rabbi Nachman wants that every Jew, like Moshe Rabbeinu wanted every Jew. If only all of Klal Yisrael would be Nevi'im. And that's exactly what's going to happen. As the Psukim and Navi describe in Yoel, as Eshpeiches Ruchiel Kal Basar V'Nivu B'Neichem U'B'Neisechem, right? And all of your sons and daughters will see visions. Every Kulam Yedu I see, the Mikatan V'Agadolim. That's where we're headed. We're headed into a non-hierarchical, almost democratic spiritual system where everyone is there. And I had this thought, like maybe in the past when you look up at the sky, it was like really the sun and the moon and the different planets, and that's like the different gedolim that you used to have. And today it's sort of splintered into like influencers. You never had such a thing, where little tiny fish like me, are sharing Torah. Like it's not, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have taken their own journey and shared it, and it impacted other people, and that's like the stars. Harabim kakochavim, and I think eventually there will be no need for this kind of interaction because everyone will just have it. Everyone will be a mashpia. Like every single person will feel that they have their own connection in such a way where kulam yedu I see, and then all of Klal Yisrael will turn into kohanim vis-a-vis the nations of the world. I think that's where this thing is headed. If you follow the trajectory of the way in which inspiration is flowing from the Gedolim to the Ketanim, the Ketanim to everyone, literally to everyone, and all of us will stand up, and all of us will find our voice, and all of us will find our capacity to share. But ultimately, when that light of the tzaddik, which is supposed to enable a person to live like Torah Aleph in a world that's lit up, in a world that's full of light and illumination and clarity and meaning, so even if a person is mamish like by the tzaddik, we talk about being an uman sometimes and feeling that, a person is there, it's possible that the person won't feel anything. And Rabbi Nachman said usually that is a result of certain actions and ways of thinking that are preventing a person from really being able to fully open up and fully connect. Some of which are quote unquote their fault, much of which is not their fault. It's just a reality that they have to be aware of. There are certain things to rectify before they can come close and before they can be the full beneficiary of the tzaddik's worldview, which is so different. He wants to literally swap out our consciousness and give us a brand new way of looking at the world, like we said, a transformational way of looking at Judaism, of looking at ourselves, of looking at others, of looking at nature, of looking at history, of looking at the whole human experience, that we don't often think very much about. And the Rebbe told us in his Gimel, and this is where we ended yesterday, that the primary rectification needs to be in the avodah, in the inyan of eating. We spent a lot of time yesterday, we spoke about, just I think could be briefly summed up, we said that it's one thing if your food has a hechsher, but what about the eating? Does the eating have a hechsher? Does the experience of eating, is that kosher? Right? How do we eat? Not just what do we eat, how do we eat? And just fascinatingly enough, and incredibly enough, and remarkably enough, and B'ezras Hashem, I'm going to post the link and post the message about it, but one of our chevra, Rabbi Yehuda, who stood up and he said, let's do this. Let's not just learn 3 lines in Likutei Moharan. Within like a half hour, like an hour, he had a whole platform set up on WhatsApp with beautifully designed different things of we're going to send out an avodah every week, and we're going to have another chat for the chevra to discuss it. And he recruited our parrot Siegel from Kol Eitz Pri, is it called? In Eretz Yisrael, and he's going to be helping to run this like a VAD, so that we can really work on it together. And B'ezras Hashem, I'm going to be sharing that link with the group, and anybody who wants can join. And in this way, we can all work on our achila, and that's it's just incredible. And he did it so quickly and easily. You're probably using a lot of technology that I said, today it's so easy to do things. All you need is a little bit of vision and motivation. If you have the slightest bit of vision and motivation today, and we're not like totally sucked into our phones and like distracted, you can do anything. You can, you just need a little bit of hope and idealism and belief that it matters and that each of us can do things. And so Ashercha, and I'm looking very much forward to working on this. But that's exactly what we learned yesterday. And let's just finish up. We'll just start inside at the very end of Eis Gimel, and we'll jump into Eis Dal. So the Mizbeach shows up in the portion of Binyamin, which is in the chelik of Torif, right? Binyamin Zeiv Yitrof. He's a wolf that tears the prey. So Bechinas Teref Nasan Li'Reyav. So, on the one hand, this can turn into teref nasan li'Reyav, that food, and it depends on food, our sustenance, can nasan li'Reyav, that can lead to us accessing Yira Shemayim, and Yira is also associated, like we had learned, with Ava, b'bechinas achila b'kashras, and then the teref is the aspect of like we're tearing apart the klipa, right? We're tearing apart that which is concealing, that which is covering over, that which is preventing us from living life with emunah and a true relationship with Hashem. Aval, however, when there's a blemish not necessarily in what the person eats, but in how the person eats, that is going to contribute to ksilus. It's going to contribute to the distance between a person's own sense of identity and contacting the source of creation, the divine. Then a person comes to a state of teirif hadas, where their whole brain is not functioning properly. And they're incapable of seeing, and that's a result of the eating. Again, not what we eat necessarily, but how we eat as well. So here we begin Eis Daled. Very, very unlikely thought journey. Very unlikely. Even yesterday, one of the chavras said it was very unlikely. It's like we weren't thinking achila would be the nakuda, and here it takes another very sharp turn.
It's amazing. It's condition too. It's also a lot about so many people talking about how it's related to food.
Yes, it's all connected to the parsha, mamish, and payas. That was the beginning of the things. This week's parsha, someone pointed out yesterday. So it's unbelievable, unbelievable. Baruch Hashem, we're exactly on track. Says the Heilige Rebbe, Eis Daled. Okay, we said the pendulum would swing, right? So Tes Zayin was all about our concern for the nations of the world, right? And the messianic aspect of drawing them close, right? And the tzaddik's job of the sun and the moon and his eyes, when we're plugged into our own tradition, it's shemesh. When we turn to look at the nations of the world, to reflect the light toward them, that's the moon. And so here Ben Nachman went very much into particularism. Kehal Yisrael, every teeny tiny movement of a Jew brings such pleasure to Hashem. The whole world was created for Kehal Yisrael. And then our fixing, which is like a little bit connected also in a sense to Tezai, our fixing, meaning our capacity to really plug into Yira and Ava, relies on Gerim. Like it's all powered, like the world is powered by us. So we are powered by Gerim and Bali Tshuva, and I shouldn't say no, not Bali Tshuva, Bali Tshuva too. But we're powered by the Umas Ha'olam, meaning we are here for them. B'shvili nivra olam, to fix it. Right? Not that the world was created for me to take advantage, like we said a number of times. The world is created for us to take responsibility for it, to do what we can to rectify it, to fix the world. Right? To fix the world. This is what we're here for. So Ula Hashlam Pagama Mizbeach is going to be Al Yedei Gerim. So how does that, like, what's the connection? How does Gerim help to fix the eating that we're talking about? How's that going to help? So the Rebbe says, "I'll think of it. Ki kol avodah zara ein lam koyach ki im bebegam hamizbeach." All the avodah zara in the world only has strength from the aspect of the blemishing of the mizbeach. Why? Because mizbeach is a primary form of avodah. That's pretty much one of the main things that happened to the Beis Hamikdash. And it was not just one of the main things that happened in the Beis Hamikdash, it was one of the primary things that was reflected in other cultures, both prior to the Beis Hamikdash and post the Beis Hamikdash, where other nations would also bring sacrifices, just not to the right place, right? Not to the infinite one. They would bring sacrifices to lesser beings that they served, right? As the Rambam explains in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, for a variety of reasons, because they believed the infinite was unreachable, the infinite, is not interested, or the infinite put others in charge, but really, really in charge, making decisions. We don't believe that. We believe that everything is keguf b'li neshama, and the Esther spheres, like I just gave a shiur earlier in the week, which will be posted at some point, not on my channel, but in somebody else's. I did it for like this festival, different speakers, where we spoke about Esther spheres b'li ma. Right, where the spheres, you can't speak about them without saying b'li ma, because it says in the Sefer Yitzira that the 10 spheres are b'li ma, they're without essence, right? Because the spheros, which are the highest, revelatory energies as far as the creation of the world is, because the blueprint of creation, they're b'li ma. We don't chas v'shalom daven to them. We don't consider them to be entities, beings. They're tools, right? They're tools. But the nations of the world onboarded sacrifice, and they're giving Mizbeach sacrifices to Avodah Zarah. And that's why the Pasuk Malachi said, which Rabbi Nachman elaborates on in Torah and Vav, which we'll get to, in all places, muktar umugash l'shmi. They are giving incense and sacrifices l'shmi, and the Pasuk goes on to criticize Klal Yisrael that my nation is out to lunch, right? I mean, the nations of the world are really serving me, says Hashem, lishmi, but they're not lishmi. So what? Because they're not serving God. What does that mean? All the nations of the world, b'chol makayim, wherever sacrifice is offered up, muktar umugash lishmi. And then the critic the criticism of Klal Yisrael is that Klal Yisrael are not plugged in spiritually. So what's this word lishmi in the context of Avodah Zarah? So Rabbi Nachman says, and he says it much clearer in Torah and Vav, which we'll see then. We're not going to turn to it now. Ki av sheim oivdei Avodah Zarah, even though they are serving Avodah Zarah, kol koicham hu ba mipkam chalkei hamizbeach. The only reason that they're doing what they're doing, which is an incredible thing, when even paganism, even Avodah Zarah, even like Aztec temples, child sacrifice, horrible things, right? Not just spiritually wrong, morally wrong, ethically wrong, totally disconnected from any kind of code and any kind of value and efficacy and productivity, etc. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you look deep in there, there's this spiritual impulse on the part of the human that's compelling them to serve some. And that impulse is a fallen spark of the natural human capacity to serve the infinite. It's an incredible thing. That's what the pasuk is telling us. That b'chal makom muktar umugash, that anywhere that any incense or any sacrifice is offered up to whatever Vishnu and everything else, whatever Avodah Zarah is going on, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rabbi Nachman is explaining, he says, really, it's just kol koicham ba mipkam chalkei hamizbeach. It's just a distorted version of what we have and what they will one day have. Ki beisi beis tefila yikare lechol ha'amim. When they will once again reconnect to the mizbeach and not have like monkeys in front of humans, kekoif b'mnei adam, but the real thing. V'alkein amar Hashem Yisbarach muktar umugash lishmi. That kol koicham hu me'anitzatz hakadosh shel hamizbeach dekedusha shenafal l'sham. There's a holy spark that was originally part of our mizbeach that fell into that place. It's an incredible, wild thing, right? Because here we're speaking about idol worship. Idol worship is a whole Masechta Avodah Zarah. It says in Chazal that Avram Avinu had a sefer. Right, his Masechtas of Avodah Zarah have 400 prakim. So it's a huge topic and it's super severe. If there's one thing that the Torah is a polemic against, aside from child sacrifice, which of course it is, which is linked to Avodah Zarah, Molech and Avram and Yitzchak and the Hakedah, it is a polemic against idol worship. Shema Yisrael Hashem L'kein Hashem Echad, in ways that if you do a little bit of research into it, it is absolutely remarkable that such a doctrine would come down at such a point in history, which was so radically different. It had no predecessor. None. The only thing they could find is like a similar story to the Mabul in the Epic of Gilgamesh, but even then it's not clear what influenced what. We're talking about thousands of years old, but this that the Torah has no corroborating other document, for the reason that we have almost no ancient corroborating evidence for anything, and the Torah just rises like a phoenix out of the fire, like there's nothing similar. It's completely different energy. There's nothing like the Torah. There's nothing like it. Nothing. I'm not talking about from a religious standpoint, just as a document. There's nothing similar at all from that era, and really from any era. In millions of ways, it's not even close. So the Torah is really a polemic against it. It's a revelation from God. You don't have to do this thing of ethnic gods and pagan sacrifice. You can all unite in the Tselem Elokim. You can all serve one source. You can all serve. It's remarkable. Mamish remarkable. What happened? Although originally this was the universal faith of Adam and Chava, I think we mentioned this, and that universal faith, I'll say very, very briefly, was undergirded, if you think of the essence of that faith, and it's true now and it was true then, is Kabbalah. Because the whole doctrine of our Emunah, which allows us to approach a world of multiplicity and to find the unity, is the system of the spheres that serves as a bridge, which enables us to understand how the one can not become many, but how the one can become refracted through the many, through a system of different energies, right? So you have Chesed and Gevurah and Tiferes and Netzach and Hod, all of which are vessels, and Kalim for the singular light of the divine and the singular ray of the infinite, which is the Or Ein Sof. But that doctrine, as is readily apparent from all of the introductions to the various Kabbalah Sefarim that are warning us, like I just said, against davening to the spheres, thinking the spheres are divine, and they make a very, very big warning because you can fall easily into the worst Avodah Zarah, specifically through the experience of the spheros, because it's such a delicate doctrine. With time, the spheros became fragmented, which is in a certain sense, it's so deep, it's so hard to say, in a certain sense, a reflection of Shvir Sakelim, right, of the primordial breakage, which is where the spheros didn't interact one with the other. Each one said, Ana Emloch, right? Each one said, right, meaning in a previous, I don't think we've spoken about it, but there was a stage in creation called Shvir Sakelim, where all the spheros sort of wanted to operate on their own. So Chesed thought that it was the only sphere and it couldn't interact with Gevurah to produce Tiferes. And Gevurah thought it was the only sphere and it couldn't interact with Chesed to produce Tiferes. Right? And there was no Kava in Sa'i, right, which is Emes, which is the way that things can stand. Kushta Koi, Shikra Loi Koi. And so in a certain sense, within creation, there was the embodiment of Shvir Sakelim, when all of, for example, the 7 Canaanite nations all took the 7 lower spheres, it's an incredible thing, and turned them into their own ethnic gods. And so the 7 Canaanite nations are serving the spheres. Klal Yisrael comes in as the unifying force to say, listen, we're not doing this. If you want to be a part of us, great. If not, you need to leave the land. We had no issue if they would have surrendered to us, but we're bringing in a new paradigm where all of your gods are actually vessels for the infinite. They're not gods at all. They're just various facets of this singular diamond called Shema Yisrael Hashem Lekeinu Hashem Echad, called V'yadata Yim Hashavos Halvach Hashem Lekeinu Hashemayim Yimav Ala Aretz Minachas Ein Oid, Ein Oid, Ein Oid, Ein Oid. So according to this doctrine, if you want to read much more about this, you can take a look at the writings of Rabbi Leo ben Amozeg, who wrote about this in a way that nobody else even began to understand this until Rabbi Leo. You'll Google him, you'll find all of his writings. It's remarkable, hidden messianic tzaddik who's being rediscovered today. As Hashem, I'm going to do a lot of work with his writings. It's the key. It's exactly the key for how this whole thing is going to unfold. V'siyata d'shmaya. It's amazing. Totally hidden. Nobody knows about him. But it's all rooted here, because Rabbi Nachman is really the totality of it. So you all find it right here in 2 lines from the Rebbe. Ki koicham, all of the energy of the Avodah Zarah, hu me'anitzatz HaKadosh shel HaMizbeach d'Kedusha shenafal l'sham. So you see what happened? The singularity of the service of the infinite abstract, like the most infinite, becomes refracted into all of the different nations. And now here's the key. As we're going to see, here's the key. And it's something that I think we mentioned briefly. Klal Yisrael goes into exile among the nations of the world, according to the Arizal, in order la'alot nitzotzot, right, to elevate the sparks. Aliyas nitzotzos, right, to go around from culture to culture, and to rectify the sparks. So what is that? So one interpretation, which is a very sort of conservative, just safe interpretation, is it's totally spiritual, and it has to do with sort of eating the food and making brachas on them, and there are sparks in the food, and you made a bracha on it and you release a spark. There's truth to that. There's no question about that. That's true. The R Chaim HaKadosh and the Arizal also, I believe, speaks about Gerim, right, which Rabbi Nachman is going to speak very much about, which means that we went into the different parts of the world in order to attract those sparks that had gotten lost, which we're going to learn about in the form of humans, right? And the R Chaim HaKadosh, if I haven't mentioned this in this context, if I have, you'll forgive me, I'll just repeat, but the R Chaim HaKadosh explains that it's like an electromagnetic force that's so incredibly powerful that it's able to be in one location and draw all different metals to it because it's so powerful. And then when somebody takes that incredibly powerful magnet and splinters it into many pieces, then it gets a lot less powerful, and those little pieces, if they want to attract the metal, need to go out to where the metal is. So that our Chaim HaKadosh writes this very clearly, that when there was sinas chinam, right, so when Klal Yisrael split apart and the electromagnetic force wasn't functioning 12 shvatim in tandem one with the other, recognizing their singularity and their essential spirit, like a post that I posted earlier, when all of us can learn from all of us, and we can mamish identify with our internal essential sparks, so then we have that unity. Then we don't have to go into the nations of the world, but we become split up, and so then all of these different fragments of magnet need to then go all around the world. So that's another interpretation. We went to attract the spark embodied in humans, that they should become Geirim. Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg takes a completely different approach. He says, no. He says there are things that are shaykh to our religious sentiments that the nations of the world have, that we lost, that they have. Mipkama Mizbeach. That they guarded certain aspects of spirituality, different aspects of connection, and we onboard some of their, it's an incredible thing, some of their sentiments. That meaning there are cultural nitzotzos, that we had to go to this culture and that culture to onboard some of their, whether practices, some of their thinking about God that they had that we didn't have. And there's an exchange that's taking place. And they contribute and we contribute. So we sort of help to refine those concepts. There's a lot of talk now, a couple of weeks ago about Shlisel Challah. Is it pagan? Where does it come from? According to this doctrine, it's totally cool. It's like it became a Minig Yisrael. Sure, it may have originated by the Goyim, but that's okay. We have a theory about that. It's called Aliyas Nitzaitzis. And now it became part of Klal Yisrael. And there are tzaddikim that did it. It's like, what's the big thing? Like, what's the, these like, okay, Azov. It's now part of our tradition. The Tzaddikei Hadar who knew halacha and halachas Adar Ge'amayri and so on, and they knew it. Why is that so challenging? Kaparas, okay, aside from the ethical part. But like, why is this so challenging? This is what Klal Yisrael has always done. And from this standpoint, it's not difficult to then say, oh, look at Klal Yisrael, they do practices like the others, or others do practices like us, and there's some concept, a lot of Egyptian culture, which now we're discovering, and learning a lot of certain similar doctrines, and it's not a stira. Adrabah, we went down to Mitzrayim to clean out all of the nitzotzos from there. So of course there's going to be a lot that we learned in Mitzrayim as a nation. It's a remarkable thing. And so from this standpoint, a lot of the challenge to Jewish tradition on the part of biblical criticism, which sees archaeology and sees things, says, oh, the Jewish nation is just a hodgepodge of different different practices. That we, from this standpoint, take it a step back and say, no, those practices are Jewish practices. Meaning those, because Jewish is not Jewish. It's human. And they were part of the original human universal religion that then became fragmented through Shviras HaKelim, where this one served this sphera and that one served that sphera, and they preserved different facets of it. Klal Yisrael's job is to go throughout the whole world and collect them back and just find all the lost objects and then bring them all back to Yerushalayim and reconstitute the human family. How beautiful is that? How elegant is that? That's what Rabbi Nachman is saying here, I believe.
That's confidence. We were talking about yesterday.
Mamish.
That's literally.
Mamish. I'm not scared of.
15-year-old would understand.
Yeah, I'm not scared of anything. Because that's what happens. They go on Google, they find some Bible criticism that in Mitzrayim they wore something similar to tefillin, and they go crazy. That's it. The whole thing is sheker. Because look, and from our standpoint, they say what? It's beautiful that we have a relationship with the world. We were supposed to onboard things. We were supposed to contribute things. I'm not afraid of anything. That's part of my belief. That's part of my religion. That's fine. But our kids don't forget, forget how distant they are from this, how distant they are from most of what we talk about from this. Who speaks like that? Who knows what Rabbi Nachman is saying, that koicham, that the umas ha'olam, that the avodah zara, who minitza tzakadosh al mizbeach to kedusha, shenafal hasham, unbelievable. And it's specifically through the direct influence that the Geirim, who don't leave their culture behind, a Venezuelan, somebody who comes from some South American place, they don't leave they come and they contribute to Klal Yisrael. They contribute. Nisan Black, has contributed culturally to Klal Yisrael in a way that without him, as a Ger, right, who comes from a very, very specific cultural background, we would be at a loss. Klal Yisrael would lack a certain light that he needed to bring. Alex Clare is not a ger, right? But Alex Clare is about tshuva, right? But Alex Clare is a ger? I don't believe so. He's about tshuva, but I believe. But so many gerim, right? Who bring, okay, but it doesn't matter. But tshuva are also influenced culturally, and they bring, so whatever. But it's all part of the plan. The point is, it's all part of the plan, right? And so the gerim actually serve to carry different cultural aspects from their background, even though it's not shaykh. Let's not get distracted right now. We'll carry on with that afterwards. But just like so, yeah, they leave their parents behind, they leave their family behind. But you can't remove their identity. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. He wants that the Gerim should come and should bring their cultural aspect and thereby contribute to the development of our cosmopolitan nation, which is reflective of all people. Because it needs to be. Because it has to have something relevant to say to all people. Oh, it's so deep, it's so deep, it's so deep, and it's so crucial. And everyone needs to know this. Breslov is only for a niche group of people who are... This is basic Judaism. This is not like... This is Aleph Beis of Aleph Beis of Aleph Beis that almost no one knows. And I'm not talking about Amoratz, I'm talking about Rabbanim. I sit with Rabbanim. I'm speaking to them. They don't know this. They just don't know it. They don't think about it. Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, it doesn't come into their brain, that they're not functioning on that level. They're huge Talmidei Chachamim, way bigger than I'll ever be. But there are fundamentals that are lacking.
Yeah. Yiddishkeit does not encourage Geras. So how does that connect? If we need the nitzoises to bring...
we're going to see. Rabbi Nachman's going to... First of all, everything that we speak about from the standpoint of trying to teach the nation to the world, we're not speaking about Gerim. We were speaking about it. That's why I said there's a difference. In Zayin, we were speaking about the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, which Yiddishkeit not only encourages, but the Rambam paskins la'alacha, that you must do it. It's not only a nice thing. It is what we absolutely need to do. And the way that we set it up, the whole reason we have 613 is because of their 7, right? And that's so that for sure. Rabbi Nachman over here is not necessarily speaking about what needs to happen in a frontal sort of active way, but what happens and how that benefits us. We're going to see. That's the whole next Indian. As like how do we cause Gerim to because you're right, because we don't go out and do Geras, even though Avram Avinu made Gerim, Yitzchak Avinu made Gerim, Yaakov Avinu made Gerim. So my bar mitzvah parsha, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv, says Rashi, he returned to the avodah of his father la'eretz migurei aviv to make Gerim. And there were singular tzaddikim throughout the generations who did advocate for this in a more active way. Rabbi Nachman is maybe primary among them. There's nobody who spoke more about Gerim than Rabbi Nachman. Nobody. And I said culturally, if you remember, in terms of where he lived and what kind of oppression and what kind... Today, you could speak about it because people are pleasant and nice to you. You could go shopping in Tesco, People were trying to kill them the whole time. And Rabbi Nachman had this vision, like, imagine how he felt to know all of this then. And to be persecuted by other religious Jews who were so behind him that they couldn't even grasp it. Same is true for Rav Kook. Same is true for the Lubavitch Rebbe. I mean, unbelievable. These are messianic souls. You have to recognize these are Mashiach people. These are not your standard fare. These are messianic souls, and Klal Yisrael needs to wake up to it because that's where we're living now. Like I said, I have to wake up. We have to wake up. It's not our fault. I'm not. But we have to wake up. Ki koicham hu me'anitzat hakadosh shalom ezbeach de kedusha shenafel l'sham. V'ayidei gerim, and through gerim, al yidei shekol echad mashlech amunasei v'hoylech achar amunas Yisrael, they let go of their faith, which again, in a certain sense, is valid. It's a refraction and a reflection of a valid faith. And it comes from a very holy place inside of them. They want to serve Hashem. They want to serve the one. They think they're serving the one, but it ain't. It's just a sphera. It's just a bechina. It's a kino. It's a kli. It's not the thing. Listen to the code. Listen to what Rabbi Nachman is saying. That their avodah zarah came from the pigam of the chelik of the mizbeach that was shattered. Va'azai chayzrin nitzoytzei chelkei hamizbeach lemekayimam v'nishlam hamizbeach. It's an incredible thing. He almost couldn't be more explicit once you know how to read it a little bit. Rabbi Nachman is saying that our Mizbeach and the Mizbeach HaShlishi is going to be the culmination of all of the Nitzotzos, of all the Mizbechas, of all the religions. So not only will it be a temple for all the people, it will be a temple because of all the people. Yikare Mikol, not only Likol, but Mikol Amin. The third temple will be contributed if only we approach the nations of the world with this openness, with this willingness to engage, to dialogue, to talk, not from a place of capitulation, from a place of confidence and strength. And like I was saying before, if we, Am Yisrael has all kinds of people. Right now, I'm friends with the dearest, most incredible Jews called Uri Lati, and you have no idea what's going. I made reference to this. You have no idea what's going on in the world through technology. The Uri Lati grew up in Syria as a child, and he speaks Arabic fluently. And there's like a couple of Syrian Jews who this is their mamalashin, and this is what either they grew up with or they got from their parents. And he sits with them in Brooklyn, and he's giving them shiurim on the parsha, and he's giving them shiurim in Arabic because this is what the language the neshama speaks. This is their mamalash speaks in Arabic, and he records it and he puts it online in case there are any Jews out there who speak Arabic or are interested. Tens of thousands of Muslims in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, around the world are tuning in weekly to his parsha shir. He's getting messages from all over the world. He was invited this week to an interfaith conference in Germany for Arabic speakers, rabbis, Christians, Muslims, getting together. A frum yid mamish. He's the real deal. And he's not looking to do it. It's just a thing that's happening. If we would send him to interact with some of the Muslim leadership and to speak a safa we were speaking about languages before, that's mat'im, not west versus east, and not like of course there's a clash because there's two completely different civilizations. Of course you have a secular Israeli state that has almost completely Western sort of sentiments, and they're supposed to interact with a completely different culture. It's EF Shar, and any peace will be completely surface. It will not be real. Because peace, like we were speaking about, Oiseh Shalom b'Mroimav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. Peace comes from above, not from Abraham Accords. Peace comes from beyond. Peace comes from faith. Peace comes from faith, not economic stability. Peace comes from mutual humility and a shared language. And we have chevra who can speak that language, so let them go and talk. Let them. People have the connections. Or Ben Abramson is doing this work already for decades and decades. Rabbi Daniel Rowe, who I mentioned in the context of Israel-Palestine with that, I don't know if you guys saw the episode, but his approach on it, he's mamish going and meeting with these people. He's sitting and talking to them. Where is our leadership on this? Where are we? And instead, with an exile mindset, we just turn inward and inward and inward and become more and more particular, and it's just about us, and it's to hell with everyone else, and that's basically the way that it goes. And there's no path forward with this kind of, this is a path backward, not a path forward. We need a path forward. We need a path up and out, a path that expands, a path that extends, a path that's rooted in big thinking, moichendig godless thinking, huge thinking, that some who are trapped within the current framework will call naive, but only those who are rooted in a futuristic framework know is the ultimate eventuality. It's not a question of if, it's only a question of when. This is what's going on today. So this is what I believe Rabbi Nachman is saying. Listen to this. The Mizbeach will be complete. This is the pasuk in Bamidbar. Lo yishkav ad yochal teref. Right, the blessing for Klal Yisrael. They will not lay down ad yochal teref until they eat their prey. V'dam chalolim yishta, and they will drink the blood of their enemies. They will drink the blood of the corpses. V'targumai. What does this mean? Says the Targum Onkelos. V'nichsei amamaya yeras. They will inherit the treasures, the nichasim, the property of the nations. Wow, what a thing, huh? Look at that Targum. So the question is, how are you looking at that? From an exilic mindset, we're going to conquest everybody, strip them of all of their goods, and we'll take it because God created the world for us, and we're the chosen nation, and we deserve everything, and that's it, right? And that's like some crazy, corrupt, exilic way of thinking of it. Says Rabbi Nachman, no. You know what it means? V'nichsei amamaya yeras. It means that they have something to share with us, and we're going to onboard that, and we're going to respect that. And we're going to allow them to preserve their integrity. And we're going to thank them for mamish having guarded this. This is the aspect of, because Yoichal Teref is the beginning of that pasuk. Teref is a reference to the Mizbeach, because Mizbeach bechalka shel Teref. Says Rabbi Nachman, if there's a reference to Teref, there's a reference to Mizbeach. And then what are the next three words? The Nichse Amamaya Yeras, right? Because that is the Teref. That's how you recreate the Mizbeach. That's the Shleimus HaMizbeach, is when we're able to go out and we're able to onboard in a healthy, holy way, guided by our Torah to know what to bring in and what to leave out, and how to rectify and how to clarify. And it's a very nuanced, delicate. We don't want to just open the door and then we'll be completely influenced and then we'll be overrun. So it has to be a very, very delicate process. Delicate, but it has to be a process. Then that's the aspect of the Mizbeach that's in the portion of Torah, of Binyamin. How do we get the Yoichal Teref? How do we get the Mizbeach? By virtue of Hainu al Yedei Gerim, through the Gerim who are there to bring in a very subtle, careful way, their cultural nuance. And they bring it into Klal Yisrael, and Klal Yisrael becomes a nation that reflects all nations. Right, that if a ger dies and he doesn't have offspring, whoever wants can take it, right? Because he has no natural offspring, he has no next of kin, right? Because the ger is alone. So it says Rabbi Nachman, what that means, that he's sort of interpreting it, but he doesn't spell it out. But I'll just tell you, Kol HaKoidim is a reference to Klal Yisrael, because we learned Bishvil Yisrael Shenikru Ureishis, Klal Yisrael are Kadum. Klal Yisrael come first. The sefer Nachlas Yaakov, it is commentary on Pesach, his Drushim to Pesach. It's an incredible set of Svarim, my father's favorite Svarim, Nachlas Yaakov. So he says over there that I think he quotes the Bnei Yissaschar, if I'm not mistaken. He says that where the terminology Nachash HaKadmaini, which we call the primordial snake, he interprets as the Nachash that comes to battle against Kadmaini. Meaning it comes to try to convince us that we are not Kadam, that we are not, there's nothing special about Klal Yisrael. It's the Nachash HaKadmaini. That's its whole thing, is that its whole job is to try to convince Klal Yisrael that they're not the priesthood sect, and they should just lay down and roll over and try to survive and fight anti-Semitism, and that's what we're here to do in this world. Right? And that's the Mamash, the Nachash HaKadmaini. Instead of really standing up and rising into our power, Harim Karen Yisrael Amecha, like we've described in many shiurim now. So Kol HaKoidim is the reference to Klal Yisrael, the Koidem that are connected to Kol, and Benichse Hager Zacha. The Gerim carry Nichasim, they carry property with them from their cultural association with the nations of the world, and when we onboard that Zacha, right? When we onboard that, we are clarified, we are refined, they have something to give us, and we approach them with humility, with respect. It's an incredible thing. You walk down the street, not only do you look at every human being as at Selam Elokim, which we discussed earlier in the week, but you recognize that they have something we don't. They have something. We spoke about the Eastern religions, right? And a certain degree of Mesiras Nefesh, and a certain degree, there's a tremendous amount of truth there. It is okay to say that. It is okay to say that we could benefit from certain techniques in mindfulness and meditation, right? That they have that we don't, that we lost. And it's not that it's not ours. It is ours. Everything's ours, because there's no ours. It's ours with a huge O, because it's all of ours. So when I say all of ours, I don't just mean all of humanity's. I mean all of existences, because it's ours. Because Malach al Aretz Kinyanecha, like we are your Kinyanim. Hakadosh v'Koinei Hakol. We all belong to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. We're all His anyway. And it's a total shift. When we begin to think, and people say, oh, it's such a dangerous ideology because now you're allowing our children to go, Adarabah, there's nothing safer than this. You know what's dangerous? When we tell our children that the only truth in the world is in Judaism, and then they turn like 14 years old and they do a Google search, and they find all of a sudden that the other people had other things to say, and they discover this philosopher, they discover that thing and the other thing, and all of a sudden the whole thing falls apart. That's dangerous. That is super dangerous. And I see this happening Yoyim Avalayla, particularly by Hasidim, who have no access to anything. The second that they do, game over. Because the whole thing was built on sheker. The whole thing was built on a total illusion that is divorced from reality. And then they go through difficulties and they sit in a therapist's office, and all of a sudden finally somebody's speaking to them something of value, and that's valuable, and the Torah isn't valuable, as if it wasn't all part of the Torah. As if we couldn't develop a much healthier, stable, truthful, honest, humble perspective that I think is much safer if done properly, but it can be done properly. A question?
Just to point out, that based on the contrast that you wrote called What is a Jew? Amalek attacks us on the way to Har Sinai, where we get the mission that we're a Mamlechet Kohanim.
Beautiful.
And Amalek, of course, comes straight from the Nachal.
Beautiful.
Kalmoini.
Bidyuk.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously prior to the second Kabbalah Torah of the Purim story,
Purim,
right? It's also Haman Amalek. It's the same
Haman
idea.
Questioning
Beautiful.
this nation,
That's
and we therefore question ourselves because of Haman's Safek.
That's right.
Safek is
That's
Amalek
right.
as well.
Bidyuk. Which goes like the whole without going to the whole pamphlet now, but the aspect of causing us to think about conditions, right? Conditions like, do we deserve it? Ki'ilu, being chosen, is something to deserve. It's not something to deserve. It's not. It's a responsibility. It has nothing to do with deserving or not deserving. It's something that we are. It's a fact. It's not. Yeah, and that's Ayin Sham in the pamphlet where we go through the whole thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot of things to send on the group now. So let's finish up this. Okay, we're out of time. Let's just finish this, and you'll forgive me. We learned very little, but it's so dense and it's so thick, and it's
We didn't learn that all. We didn't learn that till we covered
No. Yeah, we covered a lot. It's small in quantity, but very, very, very deep in quality. It's a whole worldview, and we have to heal. Like we're coming into the light. You have to understand. Like remember what Rabbi Nosson said in Akdama. Rabbi Nachman's whole Likutei Moharan is Leimar la'asurim se'u v'la'asher yoshev b'choshech higalu. The whole purpose of the sefer is to tell those who are trapped in chains, se'u, free yourself from constriction. And those who are sitting in darkness, higalu, be redeemed. Wake up from smallness. Wake up from katnus. See the world in a big way. See yourself in a big way. And that's why, again, it's frustrating. People think Breslov is just for a tiny sliver of the population, and it's really, 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 really not. And the only reason why people think that way is reflective of how deeply they need it, because they think that way, and they don't understand how deeply it is for everybody. Because it's mamish, cuts to the core of so much of what we need to fix and to rectify and to expand. And it's so desperate now, more than ever, when the world is falling apart, and the world needs Yidden to stand up and to be Yidden. I can't do it alone, and we can't do it alone. We need to do it all together as a nation. One day. So that's something, somehow we are rectified. And I think this is a good place to stop. First of all, because we're out of time, and second of all, because Hay is really a huge Inyan, which I think we're going to find absolutely fascinating. The Rebbe's thinking is just it's a different thing. But as just Hashem, we'll jump back into this on Monday morning. And thank you so much for another incredible week of learning together. Thank you so much.
שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני